This is lesson 661, the Ottoman Turks. And our quote today is from Neil deGrasse Tyson, who said, "I know of no time in human history where ignorance was better than knowledge." It's funny because sometimes it just feels like some people just want to celebrate ignorance and consider ignorance to be admirable. It's not according to Neil deGrasse Tyson. In May 1453, the impossible happened. It was an event that was extremely frightening for Europeans. It was their 9/11. The city of Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Empire. Constantinople was Europe's largest city. It had been Europe's unbroken connection to ancient Rome. We've talked a lot about Constantinople in this class. And its fall meant an end to the Byzantine Empire forever. The Ottoman Turks made Constantinople their new capital city. Interesting side fact, most people think that the Ottomans immediately renamed the city Istanbul, but in fact, Constantinople was not officially renamed Istanbul until 1930. The Ottoman Turks seemed militarily unstoppable. On land, at sea, they were a very aggressive empire. Most of the Balkan Peninsula had fallen to them by the year 1451. And by this time, Europeans were asking themselves if this was not a punishment from God for their sins. There seemed to be no limit to Ottoman Turk power. They seemed to be able to somehow summon whatever strength it took to win every battle every time. There was a temporary stop in the year 1481 to Ottoman aggression, and that happened when the Sultan Mehmet II, the ruler who conquered Constantinople in 1453, died. Turkish expansion into Europe halted for a while, but in the meantime, the Ottoman Turks aggressively attacked their Muslim neighbors. Every year, the Doge, and that was the ruler of Venice, conducted an ancient public ceremony in which he, quote, married the sea. Venice was a great sea power, so it was an important yearly celebration. But this time, the Mediterranean Sea was almost entirely owned by the Ottoman Empire, not Venice. The Mediterranean Sea had become a Turkish lake by the year 1521. The Ottomans resumed their conquest of Europe in the 1520s. In 1521, Suleiman the Magnificent, also known as Suleiman the Lawgiver, took the city of Belgrade, which is in modern-day Serbia, and made it into a staging area for future campaigns. In 1526, he wiped out the Hungarians in the Battle of Mohacs, in which King Louis II of Hungary and Bohemia was killed. The Turks had modern artillery and modern muskets that the Hungarians did not have. Then, in the year 1529, Suleiman laid siege to the city of Vienna, one of the capitals of the Holy Roman Empire. And the only reason Suleiman didn't take the city was because its supply lines had been stretched too far. Who actually were these Ottoman Empire builders? Some Ottoman people and ideas to know: Suleiman the Magnificent, concubines, janissaries, the millet system, and Hurrem. Background of the Ottomans. The Ottomans began as nomads from Central Asia. They became one of numerous Turkish peoples who settled in Anatolia, that is, modern-day Turkey. Around 1300, the Muslim Turks of Anatolia were unified and formed the Ottoman Empire. The name came from an early leader named Osman. Big ticket item right here: the Ottoman religion, Islam. The Ottomans were a Muslim people, but there were also many different kinds of people living within their empire. The Ottomans were relatively tolerant of Jews and Christians. However, keep in mind that nobody was great at tolerance during this time. The Ottoman Empire served as a destination for refugees who were escaping Spanish persecution and the wars of religion that were going on in Europe in the 1500s. Over time, the Ottomans built a huge empire around the Mediterranean Sea. Their empire went deep into Eastern Europe, and they attempted to conquer the Austrian capital of Vienna not once, but twice. The Slave Corps. The Sultan was the absolute ruler of the Ottoman Empire. But the Slave Corps ran the bureaucracy. Yes, a corps of slave bureaucrats. These slaves were well trained for their jobs. They were often non-Muslims who were taxed from their parents and raised to serve in the slave corps. Those who served well in the slave corps enjoyed wealth and power. The Sultan often married his daughters to high-ranking members of the slave corps. What is a bureaucracy, you might ask? Well, we've defined this before, but a bureaucracy is an organization made up of many departments and divisions that are administered by lots of people. Governments are bureaucracies. Corporations are bureaucracies. Agencies are bureaucracies. Richardson High School is a bureaucracy. The millet system. The Ottomans divided their subjects into religious communities: Orthodox Christians, Jews, Armenian Christians, Muslims. All of these various divisions were called millets, and each millet or nation enjoyed some degree of autonomous self-government under its own religious leaders. The millet system created a bond between the Ottoman ruling class and religious leaders. Religious leaders did these things for the Ottoman government. They collected taxes for the state. They regulated group behavior. They maintained law courts and schools and houses of worship and hospitals. The Ottoman economy. Unlike in Europe, which had a noble class based upon land ownership, i.e. feudalism, agricultural land in the Ottoman Empire was the personal property of the Sultan. Peasants paid taxes directly to him. Big ticket item right here, the Ottoman economy. The Ottoman Empire became wealthy by controlling trade between Europe and the East Indian Ocean and Asia. Ottoman military, the Janissary Corps. Part of the Slave Corps was the Janissary Corps. The Janissary Corps were the Sultan's highly formidable army. They were originally composed of non-Muslim slaves trained from childhood to be fighters. But by 1683, the use of indoctrinated slave children was no longer necessary, and here's why. The Janissary Corps was so successful that voluntary recruitment supplied all the numbers they needed. Ottoman succession, the Sultan. Sultans married women of the highest nobility, but they did not want the wife's family to gain too much influence in the empire. So the sultans had no children by their own wives. Instead, sultans kept concubines of lower rank. Sultans procreated through their concubines. Each concubine could only have one male heir. When the male son was ready, he was put in charge of an Ottoman province, and his concubine mother would go with him to help him run things. Whenever the sultan died, the oldest son would travel to the capital as fast as he could and assume the throne. All other male sons who were running other provinces were strangulated to death as a precaution against usurpers. This ensured loyalty and stability in the empire, and it prevented civil war. Suleiman, a.k.a. Suleiman the Magnificent. He ruled from 1520 to 1566, and he altered the succession system. He married his Polish concubine, Hurrem. He had 5 children with her, and her son, Selim II, inherited the throne. That wasn't supposed to happen either. Hurrem herself became very powerful and influential. The Ottomans' slow decline after Suleiman. The Ottomans suffered numerous revolts. They also suffered the loss of international trade due to the Portuguese and Dutch exploration, which we've talked about. Prices went up, their population shrank, and the military failed to stay modern. They failed to adopt new technologies, and they failed to adopt new training methods. They had to surrender Hungary and Transylvania to the Austrians. They failed twice at conquering the Austrian capital of Vienna.